Hello, and welcome to another episode of Random Chess Person. I suppose I'm not entirely random, but I am a person, and on a good day, I can correctly spell chess. Today, I want to talk about a new opening I have recently learned, or am starting to learn, called the hippopotamus, or the Hippo Defense. It's usually played by black, but I have seen a few games where it's played by white. In fact, I played a game as white with the white pieces, using this defense. Basically, it looks like the black pieces setup that you see on the board before you, with the first two, the middle two, and the last two pawns advanced one square forward. The bishops fianchettoed, basically, and the knights here. Now, this can arise from various defenses, but basically the idea is, that with this setup, the squares that are circled in green are the ones that are currently under attack by the black pieces. The bishops obviously guard the diagonals, the pawns guard the squares diagonally in front of them, the knights, you know what they do. Using the arrows, this is basically what the black pieces, where they can go on the next turn. And it's fairly well protected internally. I've tried to show that here with the rook. The rook's guarding the pawns, the bishop's guarding the corner pawns, these two pawns that are set back here guard the two pawns diagonally in front of them, the knights guard those two pawns, and so on. There are a few weaknesses, and I've circled them here. The two bishops are currently unguarded, so if the opponent were able to get a piece in there, you would have to adjust to guard those bishops or move them. And other than the king, nobody's guarding the f7 pawn. But these are all things that can be dealt with as the opening advances. Now here, I'm showing how the hippo can arise from existing openings. What's shown here is move 4 of the modern defense. And now here the modern diverts. Obviously the knight moves forward in the modern defense. But until that point, this can transpose or transition into the hippopotamus. So your opponent can be watching you play the modern defense until this point. And then you have to do something different for it to be the hippo. Here, this is the Owen defense. The first 4 moves, 2 pawns up and the bishop fianchettoed on the right. The next move in the Owen defense is this bishop out to c5, or b5, sorry. But up to that point, your opponent sees you playing the Owen defense, if they've heard of that. Also, the Pirc, the first move of the Pirc defense, as long as you don't make that second move of this knight, can transition into the hippo. Regardless, that's what it looks like, and we're going to go to the first game that I played the hippo defense as white. And the black doesn't know what to do here, so they try to grab space in the center. The computer doesn't like this, but I'm preventing a pawn advance. Black grabs more space in the center. I fianchetto my queenside bishop, attacking the king pawn. Black protects it. As you can see, the opponent really doesn't know what to do. And with this hippo defense, I'm fairly easily blocking what my opponent does. And then, with a simple pawn advance, I chase the bishop back. Just a little bit. Now here, you can move this pawn forward to chase the bishop back even further. If they decide to sacrifice the knight, and then the bishop takes, now I've got an open file for this rook. But that's not what happened here. I get ready to fianchetto my second bishop. It's completely safe because there's no opponent piece coming this direction. And again, because the opponent has never seen this defense, they're not really sure what to do. Here, Lichess rates white slightly better. And now I'm one pawn move away from the full Hippo setup. And they move their bishop there, so I get to move that pawn. It chases the bishop back. Now the bishop didn't go back far enough, so I push this pawn. And now that bishop's got to go somewhere else, either back behind the pawns or back there. My opponent went back there to maintain some central control with it. And I don't know if I should have castled here. The computer obviously thinks it's not great. I probably should have moved this pawn to force that bishop back as well. I don't know. Regardless, this is what happens when I don't push that pawn to block the bishop. I got to sacrifice a piece right here already. However, that means the opponent has also sacrificed a piece. Again, I think they just weren't sure what to do. Now I'm opening up a file through here. I wasn't sure if I should have traded queens here or not. I didn't know, so I just backed up mine, figuring if they want to trade, let it be down here, where I can move my rook up, and then if they want to bring theirs over, I can bring mine over, or guard with the bishop, or something. Regardless, I let them take down here, and they brought theirs over, so I went ahead and took it instead of doing what I had planned, which was backing up. Now this means, I think maybe the reason I decided to do that is that this rook is still inactive. It really can't go anywhere or do anything. So in a sense, I have an extra piece here, and the only rook that can get to this completely open file, which the computer says it was inaccurate to put it there, but in general principle, rooks do like open files. Now I've got a free pawn in the middle, so I took it. And here, if you can see the rating guess by Stockfish, white's doing very well. And a lot of it was due to the my opponent not being familiar with the opening and having no real idea of what to do. I honestly didn't have a lot of great ideas about what to do right here, other than to I have a kingside pawn majority. They only have the 3. And my idea was that's my advantage. That's the imbalance in the position, besides the fact that I have a bishop. These 3 pawns are facing these 3 pawns, and I have 1 extra pawn here. That's the idea, is to keep pushing these forward and protect with my king. Now I've got doubled pawns, but my opponent now has fewer pawns. And they could have taken this one, but obviously I would have just taken it back, and then they would have had nowhere to go with that 1 remaining pawn on that side. So I just kept pressing this, what little advantage that I had. Basically, there's not much black can do to stop me here. I know I didn't do this perfectly, and you can see white's ratings continuing to rise, 10.11.3. Now here, I'm up 20, and Stockfish now says I have mate in 6. I am not at the level where I can guess what a mate in 6 is, but I do know that right here, it says mate in 2. Now I'm assuming that's here, which is a check, and these 2 squares are guarded, so the king... Well, these squares are guarded as well. So the king would then have to go here, and then I would get a queen, and that would be mate. So I'm pretty sure that's what it meant, but I didn't realize that. So I was worried about his pawn advance, just being safe, and now I've brought myself back to mate in 5. But anyway, obviously here it says mate in 3, and it took me a little longer. In fact, a little embarrassingly, I had to go get a second queen, which I rarely do. But that's what I had to do, and I went to checkmate. But anyway, I was happy. My first attempt with the hippo worked. And just real quick, before I get done here, I want to switch to, see if I remember how to do this. Again, I messed up. There we go. There are games with people rated 2,500, 2,200, 2,400. Some of these are grandmasters. You might recognize a couple of these names, like Spassky, who have played the hippo. Now, because the hippopotamus is not in an opening book, here it's called the French Defense, normal variation. But little board here, I don't know if you can see that. It starts with, that's the hippo, right? Just like I showed you. Except it deviates there. And black won that game. Here, it's called the King's Pawn opening, Owen Defense. But it's the hippo, and black won that game. This is the King Pawn opening, Owen Defense, and black won that game. Same thing here. This is called Owen Defense as well. Here, white played it, and it was called the Nimzowitsch Larsen Attack, modern variation. But it's the hippo. And I didn't have time to trace down all of these full openings in the book to determine at what point it deviated from the Nimzowitsch Larsen Attack, modern variation. But as you can see from this setup, it's the hippo. And white won that game. This is also called Nimzowitsch Larsen Attack, where white played the hippo and won. I don't know whose game this was. It's called the King's Fianchetto opening, Indian Defense. Regardless, it fits the hippo. Here it's called the Modern Defense. Here it's called the Ready opening. But if you look, black is playing what I showed was the hippo, or the hippopotamus. But anyway, so you might play this, and the computer will call it one of these other openings. But the Ready opening again, Kingside Fianchetto variation. But at some point, it had to have deviated from that standard opening, and it becomes what we now know as the hippo. Anyway, hope that was informative. I'm going to keep playing this for a few more games against people at my level. I think it doesn't depend on this opening. It's going to depend on my mistakes or my opponent's mistakes down the line, as we saw in this game that we just analyzed. The opening was fine. In fact, it confused my opponent. They had no idea how to react to it. I was able to slowly gain space, drive them back, and eventually capitalize on their mistakes. And I was ahead the whole time, according to this graph. Maybe a couple of times during the opening, the computer thought black had an advantage, but by move 13, it went clear up and stayed there through the rest of the game. So, anyway, thank you for watching. If you happen to be more familiar with this than me, feel free to leave a comment and explain. Thank you.